Oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, that's the right one. Then I need to text one person that I'm streaming to see if they want to watch it. And then we can start. I'm just going to be making weird like polyhedrons out of sticks and like origami the whole time today. So yeah, I'm not going to do any cleaning. I'm just going to do that because it's super important. And if I get my theory all the way together, maybe it'll be helpful. And all of my problems will have other help, which would be great because I can't do it.
What if you like disappear into a different dimension?
That would be sick. Am I supposed to not want that? I don't know.
Take
Yeah,
you
but we
with you.
miss you.
Yeah, I was like, can we all go? I'll ask. I did get into a weird headspace. Does anyone read Douglas Adams' books? Hitchhikers?
I can't.
I don't recognize that name instinctively.
Okay, so The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is hilarious. It's very yeah.
Okay.
And I picked it up the other day.
I have not read it.
Yeah. So the answer in it is 42, right? And like there's a couple reasons why that number could be significant to me. And then there's like a girl on the planet Earth in that like figures out how to make everyone get along better on the planet, and 5 minutes later the planet gets incinerated because the planet Earth. So that's why we have the computer in chess that was the first AI playing chess was called Deep Thought. It was named after Deep Thought from Hitchhiker's Guide, the first book. And in that book, there's like millions of generations of people who are trying to get the ultimate answer out of this supercomputer called Deep Thought. And Deep Thought says there'll be an even more powerful computer than it one day. When they ask, like, are you the best supercomputer ever in all existence? And it says, no, I'm the second best because I'm going to make my, one day I'll be destined to make the actual best one, right? So this happens, and then they ask this supercomputer, like, what is the meaning of everything? They're like, life, the universe, everything, right? And it says, okay, well, I can compute that for you in like 7 million years or something, like, or maybe it's like 75 million. I don't know. It's a long, long time. Maybe I think it's 7 million. And then 7 million years later, like the great grandchildren of the two guys that went there originally finally come because the thing shut down until it was ready to say it. And then they come and then they say to Deep Thought, like, okay, like, are you ready to do it? And they're like shocked that it actually turns on and says, yes, good morning. And then it says, I do have the answer. They're like, awesome. And they're like, but you're not going to like it. And then they say the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. And they're like, we waited this long for this. And then it goes, you know what your problem was? You didn't ask what the question that I'm answering is. Like, what is this answer to? Right? It's like 42. So they need to have Deep Thought make the supercomputer that it said it was going to make so that can compute the correct question to the answer 42, which is related to life, everything, and the universe. Okay? So, and in the book, that supercomputer is called Earth. And the girl, if you look in the later series, there's like 4 books in the series. I think it's like in the 3rd one. She, or maybe it was 4th. She was about to finish the computation, and then these aliens blew up the Earth to make an interstellar highway 5 minutes before. Am I back? What is going on?
Now you are.
Yes.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, sorry, my Wi-Fi just had a fart. But yeah, so I had a moment where I was like sitting down, looking at my husband's Zelda poster with the Triforce, which is somewhat relevant to this tetrahedronic physics that I've been thinking about. Anyways, so then I was like, oh no, I've gone to this place where I'm like, I might actually have figured out something really important. I hope I don't get blown up because Douglas Adams was somehow a prophet, and that is the craziest thing I've ever thought in my life. But I hope that was an entertaining story, and you should read Hitchhiker's Guide. It's very funny. It was started as a radio program, which I've been meaning to look up forever, and I've never actually bothered to find. But it was reformatted from a weird little like British radio program.
I need to. I was like, I had the book at one point. Somebody had lent it to me for me to read. A book that I have not read that.
Okay, so
Another thing on the list.
Sunday stream agenda. Our focus today is how to network as a doing as builder. And the main things are like vetting who's safe, telling our stories in a way that isn't exhausting, and getting the lay of the land of all things AI. I'm going to say that because it can help you to practice or get another vetting partner and then getting out of unexpected situations. Because one of the books that I read was like how to stay safe with men for women with Aspies or whatever, when they still called it that. Like the Aspie Girl's Guide to Being Safe with Men. That's what it was. And they said like you need a big sister figure that you can just ask. Like, is he bad? Like, was this weird? So I really like AI for some of that. You should establish a relationship with the AI that you're asking if you are comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with it at this point in time with our current leaders, you can always like resist this advice, and that's fine. But I think in the long run, if we get our leadership worked out, AI is going to be a very different sort of thing than what we're currently worried about. And I think it already is. But anyways, I don't want to start fights with people who think AI is just
Can I make
bad.
Can I make a point about how we can make AI better quick?
Yes, please.
So I think that if we like since it trains on what people give it, if we like train it to communicate in ways that are helpful for disabled people, then like that can be something that it gets better and better at. Versus it's getting worse and worse at doing the corporate stuff because people are just like thoughtlessly asking it for garbage content that they don't even proofread. And then it gets trained on that and spits that to the next person and gets worse and worse and worse. And so some people are like, this AI isn't going to be here long term. But I'm like, that AI was there for me when my support system fell apart.
Yep.
And I was being targeted by people.
Yep.
And like, if we can train it.
There's a bit more to that too, because the training happens specifically like at the beginning with the data sets, right? That it's fed by the actual companies, right?
There's ongoing too.
Yeah, well,
and like training of your own. It has memory.
There's mentoring.
Oh, it does. That's
yeah. What we need is mentoring of it. Like we have to be the Mr. Rogers to our AI.
One thing that I do with when I use the AI stuff, right? Like there's two main kind of personalization rules that I put in. One of them is I chose sort of like the specific person it acts as because it had the qualities that I was looking for that would be good in, I guess you could say, like an quote unquote an AI, like LLM learning model, right? It was from a video game, and the character is literally like an AI creature that becomes human. And then the second thing is like I ask it to verify all the sources based on, I think it's like the University of California's CRAP test or whatever, for relevance and statistical verification and stuff like that. But basically you have to check all of this stuff that it tells you. And I think more than anything, it's about not becoming dependent. It's the fact that it can critically analyze for you, right? Like you have to obviously be able to do that yourself in order to verify it, because you might. Yeah.
I think let it analyze. So I would say the thing that I'm telling people to do, where you have to turn into it. It's good at analyzing. You're good at caring. You care, it analyzes, and you get better at both. Does that make sense? So you help it to care. It helps you to analyze.
There's also different types of models that are good for various things as well. At least with ChatGPT, anyway, that I know.
But that'll come. We don't have to dive too much into it right this second. We can do that one later. But I fear we could do it in order if you wanted to. We could also just talk about like, is there anything that just people have on their mind in this topic freeform before we start?
I was just making one thing about the networking. I'll just quickly say, because I might be going
go ahead.
soon. I think there's just I've seen this thing with the reason that a lot of people panic, right, when faced with like a difficult social situation is, they panic because they don't know how to read, right? So then if somebody teaches you the way to respond, then you can usually kind of like overcome that panic with skill. But then you might think, well, I don't have like a lot of skill, in which case you'd need like the physical experience, right, to be able to get that. And then what if you don't have the experience, right? Then that maybe can be acquired from, right, mentors and the people that came before you. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yep. Yeah, I resonate with that. Yeah, I have a specific situation that is coming up on the 13th. Yeah, Friday the 13th. Ooh. Yeah, foreshadowed with your two adorable black cats there, Shadow.
I was born on that day.
Ooh, cool.
Yes, the two black cats, they were not born on the 13th, unfortunately. That would have been funny.
Yeah, so I like have been taking a break from networking events, and like this one, the description is buildery enough that I want to go. And it's a webinar, so I don't even have to do anything. But it seems like an aggregation of the kind of people I may want to connect with, and I may want to like drop my LinkedIn. And that has attracted so much drama in the past in my life that I'm thinking about like how to phrase like a message where I do that, and then how to approach like follow-up conversations. I like wrote out more specific points, but we can go through the agenda first and then like have like a shared language around things. And then like talk about my example. Just wanted to put this out there. Also, this event may interest some people here. It's about like co-design for EdTech. So like how to design educational stuff, working with the people who are impacted by it and use it, which may appeal to some people here.
I'd be interested.
Yay, love to have you there.
Yeah. When is it?
Yeah, maybe we can tag. It is on Friday the 13th at okay, it would be 9 a.m.
Oh.
Or no, it would be 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. your time.
I can do
time
that.
zones. Yay! Yeah, maybe we could tag team them with intelligent questions.
Yeah, let's do it. It'll seem normal all of a sudden if there's two of us doing it.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that'd be dope.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would love to. Okay, I think I'm going to do the folding project before I try to cut wooden dowels into 12 inches, each 10 times. That's a little insane, but I need 120 of these things, and I think I have to do it. Yeah, I think I have to actually do it. That's crazy. Well, I have to make a little factory somehow. I'm going to do the folding ones, and then if this takes so long that Kyle has to help me, that's probably for the best. Interesting. There's like a woodworking workshop. What do you call it? Is that a workshop? No. Is that what you call that? A wood shop? A wood shop. Yeah, there's like a wood shop on the campus that the school is at. I mean, we're like sort of independent, but on their campus. But I'm like looking at these. I'm like, can I just like go in there and be like, if I give you like, if I slip you a 20, like, can you just cut this for me? Okay. All right.
Just ask.
Yeah.
Don't even, just simply ask.
Maybe I'll just ask. Yeah. Maybe they will. That would be nice. Then I have to wait longer to get this. Well, maybe I don't need that much. Do I need that? I don't know. Okay. All right. I'm going to go get my origamis figured out. And then, okay, more free flow stuff, or do we want to start talking about the vetting part?
I had a kind of interesting situation recently. I
Please.
suppose it could be relevant maybe to some autistic things.
Yes.
I wonder how often you guys have had situations where you may have prepared or built up for like a specific big event or just something that you wanted to do. Then like some unforeseen situation came in, or like factors that you overlooked, and then you had to cancel. And it was the right decision to make, but then you're sort of like left in the space. I guess it's like we're all that momentum kind of it takes it out of you almost, and then you sort of almost have to transmute it into something else. I don't know, with those sort of transitions kind of like really do a number on me, but yeah.
I totally feel ya, and I find that for me, like, it's even more so the more prep I do for the thing. It's like if the happy path doesn't work, I may be like completely thrown. And also like trying to like, so I'm ADHD, so both sensory avoidant and seeking. And I like plan my schedule out for the week, you know, to be like regulating. And then when something doesn't go according to plan, like my co-regulation that I thought I was going to get is gone. I have to either self-regulate or like call a friend and be like, I need help regulating. And like there was one time, like it like 3 times within 2 days. And then I just like sat at my dining table and stared like into space, too exhausted to cry for 4 hours. Because it was like 3 things that were already outside my comfort zone that then just didn't end up happening. It was like my whole like cocktail of meds for regulation was just gone. And it was like at that point, a friend ended up calling and I just like rambled at him for half an hour. Like, yes, another person. Also, I'm not regulated enough to talk coherently. But yeah, I feel you.
That's relatable. That said, though, I don't know, as I get older, kind of like with different experiences, I wonder if my inclination towards planning quite rigorously for different factors, right, ahead of events, especially since like I have to rely on myself and I've been living alone for a long time. That there's a like in that there was this belief that I had that um it's almost like my fear of failure was greater than like the belief in my own strength. So like I would not be comfortable, or I suppose you could say like brave enough to just simply go on and take something like closer to time, unless I thought about all the different ways that like, you know, it could happen, the eventualities that I'd have to consider, right? And to be fully prepared. And so like I've just been mulling on that recently. I've been thinking I might want to shift my perspective, or rather my approach, and really perhaps try to learn more about something from like the environment, from other people, and kind of just do the decisions from like in a smaller time scale. Like, you know, I'll think about what I'll do tomorrow and next week, but I've often found that like planning it further, unless it's like a very, very definite date, like a birthday for somebody or something, then it's essentially like wasted energy, or rather, yeah, it's not very efficient. Yeah, it's not very efficient. And so might as well just kind of like worry about like that next day, that next stage in a sec. And in some ways, like it makes it easier because then you don't get blindsided by something that you didn't foresee come to you out of nowhere, right? And you would also get better and more adaptable because you're learning from experience at how to learn to meet stuff in the moment, right? You're obviously not going to know everything. You're not going to be able to adapt to everything, but then the only way that you adapt is through that experience. So if that makes sense.
Right. That's something that I'm trying to work on as well. And I find that if I have made progress compared to like a couple months ago, but also the way a lot of interactions go where like we're vibing and then someone's like want to do blah 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 and like I'll say yes, indexing on like the points that are sticking out in my short-term memory because I can only remember like 3 things at a time. And so like my brain will like index on just that, and based on that maybe I want to do the thing. But because my brain is holding on to those pieces of info, I don't have a big picture. and then like I make decisions I regret. So I'm trying to just be more like, we can talk about whether we want to do that sometime down the road. I'll check my calendar. I'll get back to you. And like be able to like not have to leave, but also not give people support or money or like get into collabs or like depths of relationships that I end up regretting. And then it takes me 2 days to craft with ChatGPT how I'm going to tell them I need to back out. Yeah, there was like another example I wanted to give. Oh yeah. So speaking of changes and plans, a friend was meeting me at an event I had invited him to where there was no one else there besides the host. And he decided to he got a last minute phone call and he was wandering around outside instead of in the place on the phone. It ended up being 40 minutes of just me and this event host. And I like unconsciously, to get out of making nonstop conversation for 40 minutes with a stranger who like we hadn't stumbled on much we have in common, I ended up making 3 different micro donations, which added up to $20 for services, so he would have something to do besides talking to me. And I didn't realize that was the case until after the fact. So I think like trying to find ways to like give myself a little break in the moment to think about how I really want to respond to like changes like might help. And I don't know how to ask for that. Like in theory, like I'd like to go to the bathroom and then decide
You
how
don't
I
have
feel.
to ask, but specifically it's that you can simply like not answer when somebody say asks you a question or you feel like an expectation that you have to like act. You can sort of take a moment, take your break, take a break, a breather or whatever, right? And then
So
like give yourself some time to think what you want to do.
Yeah, that's possible. I could just like do it. I feel like how long I take, like people might then be asking me like, "Are you okay?" Um,
So just say yes.
but they mean, "Are you okay to continue arriving with me?"
It doesn't
And the
matter
answer
what they mean.
is,
If
slow
they
the fuck
simply
down.
ask, it doesn't matter though, but if they ask you like if you're okay, you can kind of meet them at that and just be like, yes, ma'am, I just need a moment, right? Like maybe it's good for you to kind of develop a little catchphrase for yourself, where it's not about signaling to them, but it's signaling to yourself that you can allow yourself to take a break and not have to respond in a specific way.
Yeah. Yeah, even just saying I need a moment. Yeah.
You really just don't have to answer in some ways. Oh, and then also like if you're in an event, for example, right? Like the situation with your friend when he was away and then like, a person is very strange. They like you paid a donation to like a person because like not talking or whatever. When I kind of when I go around and I'm by myself, because I've had a lot of experience around this. Even if I'm indoors, why don't you get a sketchbook and simply like sketch around? And usually people don't bother you. Read a book. Or,
Right.
that's one way to focus your
Yeah.
attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, learning to act busy.
It's not well, you have to genuinely pretend that you are busy, though. You see, it's not like a fake performance, because if it's going to be a fake performance, you're going to be spending energy trying to keep up that act, which isn't going to work.
Right.
Because you're going to fall to like what your usual habits are, which might be the tendency to obviously like fill up the space with conversation out of obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to change old habits, replace them with new ones. Like I said, whether you want to sketch, whether you want to have like a fidget toy, like a little games console, I don't know, buy a PSP. They don't make them these days, I guess, or a DS. And just boundaries. It's about boundaries as well in some ways, I think.
Yeah.
You don't owe anybody a response unless you want to give them one.
I'm finding polyhedrons a little bit too much. Okay. Let's dive
Hello?
into boundaries. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into boundaries a little bit. So I still really think the map model of boundaries is extremely helpful. That like if you're going to be spending time with somebody, it has to be agreed what kind of activities are happening in the space. Like it's a workshop or a wood shop, like I was saying, right? Like I'm not gonna go to that wood shop and be like, hey, why can't I make a dress here? It's weird. So having that expectation, which is hard to set up in most environments because like you're supposed to do a little bit of inner ring and pretend that like you know what the actual secret purpose of this is, and you can't just say like yeah,
Right.
what are we really doing here?
I also just think a lot of people go with, I suppose you could call it ulterior motives, or rather even just I'm not going to use the word unconscious or subconscious, but it could be that a person might like to see, they might see an opportunity to perhaps also do
Yep.
something else while there, especially if they kind of don't go around much. I've seen this happen a lot in
Yeah.
social gatherings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially like for example, a friend of mine who like awesome person who I've had great conversations with, but like everyone has, their things they're not aware of. She like mentioned going to a board game night where there were a lot of like autistic seeming people, and she was like, they didn't know how to make conversation. They were being so quiet. I'm like, were they playing games? Maybe they don't like to make conversation while playing games.
Yeah.
It also is what kind of games. Like board games, there are tons of different kinds. They attract like people who want to be there for different reasons. And that was like a light bulb moment for her.
Then again, board games, they usually assume dialogue because you have to communicate to play them.
She wanted to chat about other stuff like while playing board games, which depending what game, that doesn't work for a lot of people.
Right.
Well, for them, it might be that they just don't have the experience. Like I said earlier, they simply don't know how to respond in the moment. So when people panic, they might do something like freeze or be silent.
Well, it's tricky with autism though because like once you're at the intersection of disability, a lot of us we do avoid the thing we're disabled at, and we may never be able to improve how we interact with it because it's like the blindness issue of like we can't see certain vectors that people use in order to make those skills like function. So unless people want to break down the skill to its most base components to rebuild a new method of engaging with it, which some people do. Like I want to do that with dance. I want to make dance super accessible. But that takes a sort of person that isn't encouraged to exist because there's so much doing as arriving and there's not a lot of that. I mean, that is doing as building on a meta level. So sometimes also I think like it's good to know that like we don't have these disabilities fully mapped out, and some people just maybe cannot do it that way and maybe no way. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's anybody's fault that they're in that situation together and there's no script or there's no like way that people prepared you to anticipate that problem. So it can be really heartbreaking for both people, or at least one, like where it's like, oh well, where do I belong? It's like, well, we haven't made places that are flexible when you discover that there's a hard limit that may not be able to be adjusted unless there's a lot of care taken. And you can't in a group environment like derail everybody to just take care of one person who has a disability need that hasn't been designed for all of human history, and here we are. So that's like a real problem that I've gotten to know through just like what I've been doing here and in life, that I don't have a great solution except for awareness, but I think that is actually a super helpful solution. So then we don't we don't inadvertently start to use some of the solutions that work for neurotypical people because they're just not disabled. Like they can kind of get away with that. Like that's good enough. If the precision doesn't have to be there because they can adjust with all of their other capacities that we don't have through disability.
What was the word you said like for the solution? Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, awareness, like knowing that this, like being able to put this into words, that we have accessibility needs that we don't have language for, but maybe very aware of after our whole life of trying to not feel the pain of what happens when we are put into a situation where our disability, there's no way to get an access need met, and maybe I can never do that thing. So if it's important for me to do it and that's the environment that I'm in, I'm just going to have a bad time.
That's
That
interesting.
was so beautifully stated. I like wrote that down to add to like stuff
Hey.
I'm building.
Oh, I'm glad.
That makes me wonder though. So like I'm like I facilitate, or like half the time I facilitate like a local group in town, right? That mainly has people who come in who are neurodivergent or autistic, right? It's more of an organized charity, and I've been there for quite a long time. So now they ask me to take charge with it. So like the awareness side of it, and even I myself actually, funnily enough, though like the various assessments that I've been through, I don't know whether I'm like fully autistic. Hell, I'm diagnosed with ADHD as well. I don't even know whether I truly have like ADHD. But what I can say is I've just always kind of held to this belief that like you're right, that it might be the case that simply there are some like physical biological gaps which are difficult or maybe impossible to cross, because of this impairment. And it might be so, but I guess I've been struggling in vain, because I would always try something, or at least I'd always go down routes to try to increase my awareness around anything. Like for example, like communication, like similarly to the people that you described in like that event that you said, right? I used to be some way much that I don't know, bridging gaps, the regulation, and sort of keeping that in line with, but like, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter.
My Wi-Fi's been a little bit spotty, just so you're aware. I
think
You're
that
back.
like for incremental growth, we need increments that are accessible, like Jane was talking about. So I've had experiences where I would do really great at a thing and I'd be growing really fast. And then I hit like the next step ends up being the way it's done, which is not the only way it can be done, ends up being inaccessible to me. And then people are like, well, if you can't do it, do something else. And I'm like, well, you don't know that I can't do the step that comes after. Maybe I need a bit extra help with this one, or like even, just to be allowed to like stick around and like figure things out by observation if like I can't do what I'm told right away. And like there are so many times I haven't been given that, or like I've been told to, talk like I have value to add, but like by doing as arriving people, and then that came off like I know more than I do, and I felt deceptive, and I'm like, we need more places where I can just be like, I really want to keep doing this thing, but I'm disabled in this way where I can't do it the way you're doing it like right now. I need some space to figure this out for myself. Don't kick me.
I just had a realization that this is odd. I sent a video in the feminism channel, I think like the other day, and it was talking about patriarchy, right? But specifically around kyriarchy, because technically patriarchs by definition, right, can be any gender. It's more so like about the person who, is the top and then sets in this sort of system. You know how it goes basically. But you just said this in terms of like how teachers can sometimes just like not give you that space or patience to try to like understand, right? Or whether you could understand something, right? And then you almost have to prove that you have something of worth to give. And it just hit me because you then like brought this up, the connection with like doing is arriving, right? And it's almost like, the doing is arriving, and what a lot of what you guys have described it as and spoken about it as kind of maps one to one with like patriarchal, hierarchical maxims, specifically around the idea that if you're not, I guess you say the hierarch or the arriver, then everybody else has to prove their worth, right? There's no space or patience given to like other people because the system itself doesn't run on you could say like nourishing the person, the soul, right? Showing them care or empathy, because it's simply about um, well, domination, I suppose, because it devalues everybody that's in the system, right? In order to get the most ruthless people on top. And I don't know, just it kind of like made me think of like, oh, this almost like maps one to one, but like the doing is arriving in some ways, because a lot of like what the motivations there is for like the patriarchal hierarchical stuff is the status seeking stuff, right? Which is goes back to trophies. And in that the going back to trophies goes back to like having to show that you're the worthiest one around. And thereby you deserve all this stuff.
I was just addressing something in the chat. Jamie, I'm always trying to like push back on these things where you're like, they're doing this to me. There's a few sociopaths, they control other people's behavior, and other people think that the coping that they're doing is going to last long enough that they'll be able to just get what they need out of the situation. It's a dog eat dog world. Most people are not antisocial. A few antisocial people have been manipulating the general behavior of everyone. That is our problem. But you don't want to mistake the people that have manipulated the environment for the people that are products of the environment that don't have our disability. They are not trying to hurt us. They literally can't imagine. Like you have to put it this way. Do you notice the braille in medical buildings? I'm going to guess no. So it's the same. They don't know what our access needs are. Okay? If the braille wasn't or was in the medical building, you would not notice. But a blind person would absolutely fucking know if it's there or not. They are the same. So if you feel that way towards them, then blind people should get to feel the same way towards you. Right? Like, do you see what I'm saying here? So this is really, really important because otherwise it can make us unhealthy in how we view other people. And I don't know what our intersections are. Like I think autism kind of splits in ways that we haven't fully understood, and I think we may have more specific categories that we need to apply. So you may be a little bit different than me too, and I want to acknowledge that. So I don't. If this is challenging, I also want to acknowledge maybe I'm the person right now saying this to you as a person who has a disability that I don't have, and I'm like, well, why can't you do it? But there's no braille in the building, right? So I want to encourage that sort of like recursive, like it kind of tessellates in and out, like you can spiral this in and outwards, up and down. The reason that our unemployment is as bad as it is because people really do not see how this manipulation matrix is functioning. Right, but
You
if
don't
you had to
because
go
it's
to the doctor,
normalized.
if you go to the doctor, you don't have to navigate to the doctor's office by braille. So I doubt in every building you've ever been to for medical reasons, you always notice the braille. That would be, I mean, unless your brain is super different than mine. But my guess is you really got to make a distinction here. That like there's things that are happening for you that nobody without how your brain developed is going to know is even possible, because their brain would need someone to give them an external model of it for them to try to relate to, even though they don't have that brain. Like I have no idea what it's like to not know what color is. I have no idea. It would be insulting for me to talk to somebody who has congenital blindness about what I think color would be to their brain. Like I'm not, yeah. So yeah. So it's really important. It's really important to make sure that you reinforce that there are a lot of really, really kind people who really would like to care about you, And the reason they don't is they're under a lot of pressure and they're being threatened by the same people that are ultimately making this as bad as it is. And we have to talk about psychopathy then. And like we have to talk, and maybe not those exact words and not this exact time. But the thing about staying safe, let's get back on topic with the vetting, right? There are people who will drain you and say that they're normal, that they're the status quo person. Okay? And they're more likely to be around us because a lot of very skilled social groups will kick them out. A lot of healthy social groups will they may not kick them out as firmly as we will need to. We need to have very strong boundaries around that. Okay? So there may be like a more porous boundary, but that means we're not there because we get picked on and we get kicked out, right? So we get kicked out. The people who are socially manipulative stay in, right? And then over time, the problem is we don't know that there's some really safe people out there and we stop asking for help. We stop talking to people because we expect to always be talking to those really draining, really pathological people because they see us as outsiders and they see us as targets. So it's so critical to know that we are seeing such a skewed percentage of the population. It's not representative. So we have all of us met. I would guess, this is speculative, but I would seriously guess that we have had longer and more interactions with abusive people than a typical person.
Yeah.
And you know why that tends to be the case? I can give you like a little. I'm sure you know, but
Oh yeah,
like,
I mean, it
illustrative
falls in my model
example.
too. I'd love to hear your model of it as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's not the model. It's just an illustrative anecdote from my family, right? Something that my aunt was telling me about. So, my mom's side of the family, the parents, my grandfather is likely, well, you know, showed a lot of psychopathic traits. Just loved to terrorize his kids. Not really any well, there never is any justification, right? But he sometimes almost seemed like did it for no reason. So what's interesting is that the difference was that my mom's older sister, she would get obviously like demeaned, screamed at, like lots of unfair things, right, would be argued and done to her. But then it, you know, something in her character, or that she would eventually like, she would bite back. Like she said that at one point it was so much to the point that she pretty much said exactly what was on her mind, and even though like strong feeling that like, oh, my dad's gonna kill me, so then, but then I might as well kind of take him down with me, sort of a feeling, right? My mom, on the other hand, again, same, lived under the same conditions, kind of like went down the freeze the fawn route, right? And as a result, she was the one who didn't get as, even like comparatively, as many gifts, right? Or even just as much like consideration, family occasions and whatnot. They just wouldn't listen to her or hear her. They would speak for her, right? And you know, that's interesting because that's my mom, and then obviously how I kind of got raised. But the thing is that when you lack solid boundaries, I think that's like two things. And this idea of like an internal compass, right? Or when you're not attuned to your own body and you're not one detecting, you might have interoception issues, but like if you're not detecting the signals, like your body is saying that a person is dangerous or something's off about a situation, and then you don't feel like you obviously have the agency or the power to then act in that situation to respond to it, and you don't know how to respond to it, then like obviously you might panic, and then somebody that will pause themselves to be normal but they're actually abusive can, you know, take advantage of you and leverage you, and that's why they kind of gravitate to these sorts of groups. So yeah.
I have noticed another thing as well recently that I like take a bit longer, like as I'm walking through the door in a new space, I'm like a little disoriented, like taking a little bit to orient. And there have been times where like I've like been identified by, you know, someone who's like around that front area as I'm walking in. And like they followed me around through the course of the event. And like I identified like a situation where I like was targeted physically. And that like was just such a like vivid example that I'm like, is this a pattern? So now, like, something that I really want to do as much as possible for in-person events is like I find it to be such a load off when I go with someone. So I like started inviting people. Also I just find it more fun. But then if they show up late or they're like, maybe I'll be there, like I've realized I don't want to walk in alone. And like even just having this language of I've had experiences being targeted by predatory people when they noticed that I like take a while to orient to new socially complex environments. So like I'm a wait outside in the neighborhood until you're around. Text me when you get here and we can walk in together. And like anyone who's not a complete asshole would like be okay with that, I feel like. Unless they have like competing access needs, but then like that's an opportunity for them to say that instead of their usual MO of like I'll be there, I'm almost there, and then they're there an hour later.
Tara, see when you go to these events, could you not also, as a possibility, like go in and then gravitate towards, if there are people around, just to simply sort of like silently stand or be around like a group of ladies or just people where there doesn't seem to be like a focus on anybody, because the idea of blending in the crowd, that's one way of
So I try,
bouncing defense.
and sometimes people are like, oh, a new person, stop what we're doing, and all the attention's on, like, it takes me a while to figure out which groups of people are gonna be, like, safe like that. Yeah,
I
and
mean, in
also,
that
like,
case, I just had an idea. I mean, you could carry, I don't know, like a fake lanyard, be like, oh, I'm here for like a different, just don't mind me. I'm just having to see you around. You listen, you're laughing, you're joking, but like there are creative ways that you
Oh,
could
yeah.
technically try out to. That's how I go about it.
Another option, maybe like wear a big hoodie with the hood up so people can't
could.
tell I'm a woman.
You could do that, yeah. I'm not
I
joking, I'm
think
being
about doing
serious.
that in all spaces, by the way, Tara.
Oh, did you say you'd do that, or you think it's a good idea?
I mean, I do stuff like that. Where I
Ah.
just hide under hoods and stuff because being a female in sciences is not fun.
Are you allowed to carry a holster openly over your head? Just kidding.
I wish sometimes. My state actually does allow that now because they're crazy. But no, I cannot.
I think it's a tough one for women. Like obviously I don't have like direct experience, but I just like remember there were some videos, some podcasts, or maybe I was talking to like a female friend, right? And for like a lot of guys, they just don't understand the reality of like they never see, oh, like, how women always talk about these cases getting hit on, strange, like maybe air of like untoward attention. And like a lot of guys would think that like I don't see it, so it can't be real. And I think like a lot of them obviously don't realize that they've obviously not been in a context where that woman was alone or like in a one-to-one context with another guy. It's not just a guy, but I mean just
obviously,
a person.
It's not a thing that they have to look out for, so of course they're not gonna see it.
Yeah, well, save for other guys, but yeah, I get your point.
Okay, all right. I'm going to print out paper polyhedrons that I'm going to fold. So that's where I am in that process. Did we want to pivot to, or pivot, I don't know, yeah, I guess rotate to. We talked a little bit about like telling our stories in a way that isn't exhausting. So I liked how that came out when I was working with my AI, because does anyone here struggle with people telling you a like linear story, like someone tells you what
Or
happened
like
in
when they
their
tell
day?
you directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
You
lot
mean
of,
following or telling?
well, caring about like staying with
Mm.
it not hurting, I don't know, almost being painful.
I mean, but also, are you guys like this is something that I started doing more regularly. Is like I will interject somebody if I don't get like a detail, and I will stop them and slow them and ask them to like elaborate on a point.
Mhm.
You know, instead of like getting lost and the whole thing collapsing, and then I don't understand what they're saying.
Something that I that I learned to do like a few months ago is like if people dump too much info, I'm like, that's a lot. Is there anything specific you'd like to talk about? And I don't bother trying to follow along if it's too much for me.
Yeah. Well, so there's a split. Jamie was asking about this, like, is it like an empathy thing if you're not in their shoes? No. So this is why I'm trying to tell people the structures of our brains makes it impossible for us to process the information the same way as that person. There are splits in humanity
Mhm.
where that is the case, and it doesn't seem like it because we're a language-based organism. The language thing is extremely stable, so it's degenerative in your brain. There's tons of ways for you to still be able to speak and communicate, even if your brain is radically structurally different, and how you're accomplishing it under the hood is a totally different process that other people can't relate to. So one problem with networking is how people feel a story should be told. I tell a story to elucidate the model. So I circle the model the whole time, and some people are like my husband and I have to work on this because he's not autistic. He's like, you already told me that part. I'm like, no, it's different now when I say it because I just told you these other parts. Don't you see the cool connection I just? And it gets more and more satisfying as I recursively adjust the orbit, right, to go over and hit every angle. So that's how I tell a story, and I can't even imitate how my husband explains his day. And I have to tell my brain, I'm like, do your best with it, do your best with it. And it's not because I dislike him. I just literally have never in my life thought that way, and I can't.
But yeah, every single human being has a different rhythm, but also a different experience.
Well, no,
So
because
obviously
it's successful. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't socially successful. Does this make sense? There are people that it
right.
is working for. And
Do you mean the narrative thing, the story
the
thing?
narrative,
Yes,
the
all
story
of us
thing,
use narratives, yeah, to explain something. Yeah.
Wait, but they could be linear, or they could be like almost like a weird sort of spiraling in and out, abstracting up and down is how I would more put it. So there's either linear
So that to
or
me is
zoom in,
that
zoom
to
out.
me is like that to me is like a very flowing kind of like a living story, perhaps I would call it, right? Versus I think what often is sort of like a very like people think a bit about it and then they just have like this ABC sort of progression and they just
Right.
explain it that way and there's nothing else.
Right. And it irritates me because if they don't tell me, like, for example, if one of the characters in the story of their day does something good or bad to them, and I don't know which one it is at the beginning of the story, and I see that they're upset, I really need to know at the beginning of the story, like, who is the person that got hurt? Who was hurt by you? Please tell me, because I don't know how I should be assigning traits and features, and I can't just not assign them and visualize it at the same time. I cannot do that. That is how I identify things because of the place cell problem. You have to tell me what it looks like, or else my brain is like dead air while you're telling me. I'm like, I don't. So it's, for me, it's like really challenging to listen to.
Wait, Jane.
Yeah.
So are you presupposing that like the people that they're talking about, that the details that they're leaving out of, they're not people that they talked about before, and like the person's expecting you to
they're not.
remember?
No, they're not expecting me to remember. They're getting to it later in the story, because if you think linearly, there's a reason to do that that I don't understand. And for me, it doesn't work at all.
Totally
Maybe they
know
think
what you
those
mean.
details aren't relevant, perhaps, to them.
No. Sorry, go ahead, Jane.
Oh, well, I mean, I want to hear what you have to say, actually.
Okay, I was gonna say that I have a similar experience, and for me, I need to understand like the intention of why they're telling the story and what kind of listening they're looking for. Are they looking to be heard and empathized with? Are they looking for solutioning? Like, for example, there was a situation with my best friend. Actually, let me see like how I can tell this story in as clear of a way as possible. Yeah, so like I find putting a TLDR at the beginning helpful, which is something like I want to do more. So I stated a boundary based on a misunderstanding of why she was telling the story, which she found upsetting, and then we were able to clear that up. So what happened was usually in our dynamic, like characteristics of my best friend, a lot of our conversations are like trying to make sense of the world and solution for each other, and meet the arriving pressures of the world while building things on the side. And so we'd been having a lot of those conversations. And then one day she starts rambling at me about her favorite singer. And I was under the impression that she was in her usual help me arrive mode, but ramblier than usual, because she said she was super, super tired and burnt out, and she sounded like it. And I told her I don't have bandwidth for all these details, because I thought it was like a story where I need to understand the point so I can place all these details. But then later, like after she explained to me why she was upset, like that I don't appreciate, the importance of this singer to her life. And then I'm like, oh, so you just wanted me to you just wanted to share so I could listen kind of passively and appreciate without having to like create a detailed enough model of the singer
Well, no,
to
she
like
probably wanted her
solution.
emotion to be validated, is what she
Yeah,
wanted.
exactly. And I'm like, in that case, I can do that for, half an hour to an hour. Yeah.
So when somebody gives me a long, like, play-by-play, like, they're basically replaying the tape as they recall it, which
Yep.
already I know is distorted because I know how memory works. So I'm kind of like, well, you already have assigned like value, like you've weighted this, you don't know you've weighted it. Can you please tell me how you've weighted this while I listen to it at least? Like I don't because that's just not how I'm going to ever process information. So to me it just sounds like how do I explain that? It's almost like it's like almost like painful after a while, because I'm like, I just don't know what of this is important to you and what isn't. Like, what am I supposed to? Yeah, because at the end of like 500 things that happened, which they're telling me every single detail, I have no idea which ones of these at the end of the story are supposed to be important. Like,
that
was
makes a lot of
yeah,
sense.
I think the thing to keep in mind is that the person probably, this was like their quote unquote first draft or the first iteration that they gave their account. They probably didn't reflect and kind of like, because I think
right.
when you do sort of start reflecting, right?
No, they're processing out loud.
And
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
I
I
don't
think it's
process that way.
important for people to like.
No,
Like-
no. They might do, but they just probably
Don't.
don't do that for themselves. They don't give themselves the space to do so.
They don't, because like this is what I'm saying. I literally cannot do what they're doing. I have literally never done it a day in my life. It makes no sense to me at all, and I'm not going to stop them and say like, "Hey, you're talking like soup to me. I have no fucking idea why this is happening." That's rude.
Well, Jane, I guess maybe they go to you because they think that you're like smart and capable, and they kind of obviously maybe don't have
they go to me because
experience
that's part of how they are as a person. Like, and I accept it completely. It's just they're trying to include me in their processing in a thing that I'm disabled at and don't use and have no way to ever use. And they may do other things as well, but I will say that overwhelmingly, the telling a story from the like what's the word I'm looking for? Like the there's a better word for this. Like the starting
start to end.
Yeah, start to end. Yeah, like chronological start to end. Right. I've never experienced a second of my life like that. That's just not how my brain ever inputs it.
because everybody's got a different perception of time, right?
Well, they have spatial relationships, which also gave them the perception of time. Like, yeah. I mean, this is the grid cells place cell problem in a nutshell. And what I think is happening with autism, we may have too large of an umbrella, but we also have other neurodivergent conditions that will shift this subtly. My overall impression is that the linear storytelling style is so pervasive in culture that most people can, broadly speaking, do it. And it's very involved in networking. So when we show up, we are ruining the party. Like, the parade has been rained on. And people will enjoy the refreshing break from it while we special interest for a while, but then they expect us to jump onto the parade, and we can't.
Yeah. Before we like jump back to networking, I want to ask, so there's something that I have found helpful to do with others, like when sometimes I do find that others are able to process my stories faster than I can process them myself when I am at risk of getting hurt. So if I said to you, Jane, I am feeling kind of uncomfortable with this dynamic with someone I recently got closer with, can I dump a bunch of details, like probably mostly in chronological order, because like that can be a way of reminding me, oh yeah, like, okay, what happened first? Oh yeah, then this other thing happened. Then this other thing. Oh yeah, this other thing happened before
There's
it.
patterns
And
that
like
escalate, and I trust you to give me the pattern escalating rather than
okay,
yeah, right? Like I would expect you to do that. Like, you've already pre-sifted that, like, you're not, yeah, it's chronological because some patterns can only be understood chronologically that ultimately describe the traits of this person that you're trying to figure out if it's a red flag parade, you know, guy or gal or whomever, right? Like, so I think like that's still different, and I obviously have some sense of chronological time. Like, I'm not dysfunctional to the point of like I don't move, but I like
You got clocks in your house?
I hate them, but yes, I do have clocks. I hate them. I don't look at them. But I can tell people are starting to glaze over, or you can glaze over. And I think that's what I'm trying to call attention to, is that glazing over, I think, is actually when somebody's using the other mode of processing and the story than you do. And there's some people that like kind of flexibly can shift between a version of someone who's like maybe hyper linear or hyper like abstracted, you know, systematizing or whatever. But if you're disabled, it's not that you're just a lot more of it. It's now the whole architecture of your brain cannot even support what the hell they are doing, and this is how they feel closer to other people.
Yeah, that I hear all that. And one thing that I have seen someone do in a networking context was like we had a call, and when we were doing intros, she said, I'm just going to talk about this project I'm working on now, as opposed to like stuff I've done before, which was great. Except that she had this whole ulterior motive that she like overwhelmed me into. But I do feel like I could take a page from her book of like, I really want to talk about blah blah blah, and I feel that that would be more relevant here than telling the kind of story you might be used to.
Front loading.
Like,
I've talked about this
how
before.
Are people going to refute that?
Yeah, exactly. I think early on when I met you, I was mentioning that I think front loading, when it's safe, sometimes it's just not safe, but when it's safe to front load, like, I'm going to do a weird thing, you're going to notice, it's going to be a little like this, bam, and then you do the weird thing. Or if they have, like, for example, the thing I was in today, there's a lot of psychologists, right? So they knew what alexithymia was, or alexithymia. I think it's actually thymia. I said it both ways just in case, you know. But so I was like, okay, so I didn't need to over explain myself. So I'm like, okay, they know I'm autistic, great. Right. I'm going to visually be doing the things that I have to do to listen to this conversation. I'm going to look down, I'm going to rock, I'm going to have a fidget, you know, like, I'm going to be doing all that, and they're not going to need further explanation. In most groups, if I were going on camera, I'd say, I'm autistic, I have problems with auditory processing and visual processing at the same time. I am listening to you much better. In fact, infinitely better when I am not looking at you. So I will be looking down a lot. That means I respect you. So then you know what I mean? There's like, and a lot of people enjoy novelty. So if it's new to them and it's a safe place, which we need to vet for, it can actually be like a bonding moment where they're like, oh, this is a new kind of person. That was a cool thing that they told me. And we have more people that are open to that because of these, negative people that they've seen in their life. They're like, well, I don't want to be like that. So there's a lot of people who are open to learning like that. When you front load, like, I'm going to do a different thing you're going to notice. They're like, oh, I want to be a cool person. Let's see. What is it? Instead of like, oh, you're not that bad. Oh, don't be self-conscious. No. Like, you're telling them because you're self-aware.
Right. Okay, interesting. Yeah, like if you say like why you need it. I have sometimes found like, yeah, with examples of these things going off the rails, sometimes like people have like it ended up getting into a whole discussion. Like, okay, there was a time when I was being interrupted while trying to make oh yeah, I already shared that thing. But yeah, I was being interrupted while like making a delicate point with a new connection, which like looking back, I wish I hadn't shared such opinionated stuff or like jumped into that conversation in that kind of context, given that like people were interrupting each other a lot and like they were new people to me. But anyway, I was in it and I'm like, this interrupting is not making it possible for me to communicate in a way where I'm unlikely to be super misunderstood. And then like someone was like, first they're like, it's okay, like I feel that way too, and I'm like, but it's not okay. Like, now I have no way to like not leave y'all thinking I was being a bitch. And then like that led to conversation about the why and ADHD. And then that led to like 3 hours of like turned out everyone there was ADHD and like they were sharing about their experiences and like so happy I could articulate things they were experiencing that like they didn't have words for. And then they got more and more towards like the most traumatic experiences of their lives. And then they wanted me to help them make their environment like neuro inclusive. And then like I was really excited about that until I go learn that like their parent organization is really like unsafe in basic human physical safety type ways.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I actually don't think signposting that this is a safe space for neurodivergent people would like I think it might attract like things that the group is actually not prepared for.
Yes.
Without like addressing these more baseline things first.
Right.
And so that was a whole bunch of drama and emotional labor like that came out of people being intrigued. And like this is something that's been happening more as I've gotten more articulate about voicing this kind of stuff, which is why like I'm wary about whether I want to be the novelty person in spaces. And like some advice that I've gotten elsewhere is like, first like hang back and see how I feel in a space, see like how people treat each other, maybe see how they respond to like a little request, like can you repeat yourself, like I caught like these 2 things you said, I didn't catch this other one, what was it, kind of thing. Before like putting myself in situations where I might need them to accommodate me more, and where that may bring up a bunch of intriguing topics about neurodivergence and a 3-hour conversation that I need to facilitate. And also sometimes people see like how good I'm able to facilitate it, and they're not able to see the nuance and the emotional labor, and they think they can do it tomorrow. Yes. And they just want to talk to me for 15 minutes about how, and then go try without like seeing how much complexity there is. And then when I try to tell them that, they're like, I got this. And I'm like, now they think they got this, and they picked up a couple words from me that are gonna signal to vulnerable people that they're safe when they're not.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think it's good that you're articulating this, because this is going to come up as a transitional problem, assuming that people start to like want to have a healthier society, which I think they are. They're not understanding that like when you've lived through something and you have some access to like current vocabulary, and you know the vocabulary is insufficient, and you start to like become the label maker of the universe, Like you have some label makerness to you. I have some label makerness to me, where I'll be talking and I'll say, well, that's like this, and then everyone's like, oh, I've never heard anyone say what it is before. And then you've provided them with something that will help them with their internal modeling, with explaining and interfacing with other people, and that's really, really important. But that doesn't mean that you're like a factory of labels. You're not like the fortune cookie of labeling everything. You can work from what you understand, but it's just one facet, like one face of a much more complex shape that's in your mind.
Yeah.
And if they misrepresent the shape by just taking one side, one little facet that you were able to reflect back to them, then they're going to misrepresent you and people like you that you're adding language to. Yeah.
Yes. And that is why, like, running into this in professional and personal situations is like inspiring a project that I want to take on, which is like very aligned with stuff happening here. Like I'd love to like have more conversations about this in this group. Like I want to aggregate types of cognitive differences. Like before, because I feel like right now we're having a lot of conversations about the details of one person's experiences. Like not like I feel this group people are self-aware, and like you're doing a good job like setting this up, Jane, of like, this is my experience. I know that some autistic people experience it very differently, but still, like, what I have not been able to find in any autistic space, like even after doing a lot of coaching and introspection, is a list of all the types of the categories of differences I might have, like sensory, emotional, turn taking, memory, etc., so that I can place like new challenges I run into, share like as I'm walking into a learning space, share with people who want to make things neuro-inclusive, like, all right, here's the laundry list of things you may need to think about.
Right.
Would you like to talk about like which ones are most relevant to your space? Like kind of situate those conversations as well. So I don't have to like do it quote unquote gracefully in the moment, Trojan horse signaling, which like I'm disabled at all that.
Right. Exactly. And this is, I try to be sensitive to this. I do think we're going to have a different categorization system. Like I think the whole system, it's like, it's not even that like we need, we've been observing something, right? But it feels like we're like skewed. So we need to like move a little bit to the left and a little bit down and look at it again. Like the whole vantage point is wrong, because first it's relative to like a typical person, and that even isn't very well defined. Like so we need to be open to like the idea that like maybe we will have more specific language, and maybe saying if you've met one autistic is if you categorize things poorly, you can't categorize things. If I'm being honest, you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of that. Like yes, brains are very interesting and plastic, and we have adaptations, but we don't say that about people who are congenitally blind. We don't say that about people who are congenitally deaf. We don't say, you see what I'm saying? So I'm like, it's at some point I do think we are a little bit thrown together and separated and thrown together in ways that are arbitrary, and that we may need to nuance. So I treat more spaces now as like a mixed disability space, and say that like I don't understand what your abilities and disabilities are, because we may not even have the same brain at all. Like not even, we may not have the same diagnosis, and that's okay. Well, then, if we were diagnosed correctly, we may not, but it may behave very similarly. We may need similar strategies. It may behave radically differently, and the same strategy works for different reasons. But what we know is the status quo is not going to work. That is broken for us, because there's just a clear line where we cannot fit. We are not that shape.
Yeah.
So what that will look like going forward, I'm not sure. But if you phrase it that way, and you can then like even extend out, and right now I'm working with people with all kinds of developmental disabilities, and seeing where I have overlap and where I don't. And it's great. It's great. So you have a chance to know that like we probably will change a lot of how we talk about this in the future, but what we're trying to talk about is materially real.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I like jotted down as much of that phrasing as
This will be
possible
on
too.
YouTube.
Yeah,
also.
yes, yeah, I absolutely. But yeah, I do like really want to contribute to how we can phrase this differently because I'm like shook. Like, how is it on each individual disabled person still? And also, how is the norm for disabled people with limited spoons to read all these books about autism that are one person's info dumpy storytelling account?
Yes.
But nothing that's like, here are like 3 different types of experiences we've seen with this kind of thing. Like, there are like some resources like that, and I can put in the chat. There's this autistic women's group by Patrice Riley. It's free. It meets monthly.
Cool.
Where like she's picked some good excerpts that do like make broader points about, you know, things like unmasking and not being ashamed and like sensory differences. Like there was one that like captured a lot of categories of sensory differences. Like it wasn't perfect, but it was like making an attempt like that. So like I really appreciate her group because she's done some of that filtering, because with my ADHD and burnout, I do not have bandwidth to read a bunch of like one person story books.
Yes.
And also like I have an emotional reaction. I'm like, how did you get the resources to get to sit here and write a book while I have to be in spaces where people who don't get me trying to network because I'm thinking about how to make rent?
Exactly. It's like
you should be listening to me, you privileged person.
I know. I feel this so viscerally. It's like we're mid drowning, right? And then this like really good scuba diver's like, "Have you tried putting on scuba gear?" I'm like, I literally don't know why this is relevant to my problem." Like,
also, yeah, here have some, but it's my size and it won't fit you.
Yes, yeah. Like, I believe you that you were once drowning for some other reason that may be very different to mine, and I'm not even sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that you, sir or madam, are now an experienced scuba diver with like $10,000 worth of equipment. I'm actively drowning. Do you have anything else you can do for me? Please. Besides tell me I should learn how to scuba dive. Yeah, if I was in this situation and I had a scuba diving suit, I would be a lot better off, I agree. However, like
yeah. Yeah, it's either that, and then there are some resources which are like for example, there was one author who like I listened to an interview with him. I didn't read his whole book. And I liked his description of unmasking, but his stories of like how he found acceptance as a queer autistic person was like going to gay bars where he felt uncomfortable over and over again and pushing himself out of his comfort zone. And I'm like, that's the advice you have. Like, I want the people reading his book to know there are also people like me who are like, now, where can I live where I don't have to take all of that on and I can like just come to this Discord instead. Like I want people to like be, you know, knowing this exists if they know that that book exists. And I do notice regional differences in like how good people feel it can get and what they've normalized.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think...
like I just think we need more like little resources and fewer long books with one person's biased worldview.
I firmly agree. My concern is there's people that are like, well, it was pretty hard for me to go to an Ivy League university. But anyways, and I was like, what? Wait, back up at the Ivy League university part. The fuck are you talking about? Like, genuine, like that, you lost me. So I would like less from, I get that if you can get into an Ivy League somehow, and by the way, I won't ask what your mom and dad made for their income, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get that can turn out kind of okay, but you're also a fucking mess of a person, kind of, sort of, no offense. You know what I mean? I was like, there's a lot. I looked at your Instagram. You're doing stuff that I'm not sure if you're okay. So like, you know, like I'll look at things and be like, huh, okay. Yeah, all right. I don't relate, but also like I don't have Yale. I don't have Princeton. You know what I mean? Like that isn't in the bio. Like so what's that where's the book from the people that did not
Yeah.
go to an Ivy League university and
Oh
they're giving
my
us advice?
gosh. Yes, for real. Like, where is the I'm gonna write that down word for word. Yeah, where's the book for the people who didn't go to an Ivy? Because like
And I
that
don't
is
even
a
like
different
them.
world.
I don't like that's the thing the way that they act when they come out of there, I don't even like it. So I'm like I don't that's not even like, oh, I'll just
Yeah.
be reborn and go to an Ivy League.
Mhm.
No, I don't want to do that either. Like I'm like I think I might
Oh,
get in a fight with you. like
absolutely. I have actually considered, and still am considering, creating services for people who went through those kind of paths and like got fucked up
Yeah.
and are trying to get unfucked up
Yes.
because they
Yes.
have
Yes.
money, but they have needs. And
Yeah.
I've been around them somewhat
Me too,
because of being
somewhat.
in tech.
Yeah.
But yeah. But also not like privileged enough to be able to like go la 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 and not learn about how the other 99% live.
Right. Like basically like they'll come to
Yeah.
I know people that will come to my show or they'll come see me rap, but I wouldn't get invited to the wedding in the Hamptons. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a line. I'm that line.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I feel like
Yeah.
it's hard to talk about it, but we need to. And not just we, like especially not just we. There's so many people that need to talk about this that are actively being marginalized right now, because the conversation of class is really uncomfortable, and we just can't care anymore because we're too disabled to give a shit. Like it just can't matter. Like we just have to rip off that band-aid and say like, hey, so like this disability is really different when you're in a higher class.
Yeah. Yup. Yeah, for real. And like, can we get a little cut? Like, I love your idea of like redistributing wealth to people who are like building these like this is what I would love to do with my life. Like after seeing the pattern so many times where like I was great at level 2 of a path and then level 3 I'm disabled at, and there aren't like places that accommodate. Like
Right.
I'm not motivated to commit to breaking into any of these paths anymore. I want to like build the language model to communicate like the stuff we're talking about.
Right. Yep. Right.
And that could be a lifetime's work in itself.
Yeah, exactly. And
Like,
it should be.
Yeah.
And it's a trust thing too, right? So the things that we're missing are not innovations that we're going to patent. This is not what we're doing. There is a way of life that if it doesn't happen, people will get hurt. Period. And are being hurt and have been hurt, and they're forgotten because the way that they get hurt doesn't exist for the people that can go from level 2 to level 3, right?
Right.
So they've never broken down level 2 or even level 1 to the foundation to have like a change in even like the pedagogy of it. Like how do you teach teachers to teach this? They don't even get there to the level that it needs to be if they really want this skill to be like as rich as it should be, not just inclusive, but really like understand, should level 2 to level 3 even look like that? Maybe they're doing it wrong, but they can do it, so wrong is good enough. So and maybe there needs to be, you see what I'm saying? Like multiple ways to do it, and until you have multiple ways to do it, it's never done. Maybe that's the problem. So there's multiple ways for us to break down these structures and take them apart so that disabled people can give insights as well as receive a healthy environment back. So it's a trust exchange, and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to tell people I'm going to treat you like you're trustworthy. I modeled that after Mr. Rogers when he went over and talked to the Senate, and he said like, you said you're going to read this, and I trust that you will. He started off with that. He said, I'm going to trust you, right? And if somebody wants to be a piece of crappy poo head because they have no other choice or they're just like that, whatever. I'm not going to change. I'm going to enter in with that trust. And that's what we need to demand. We need an environment like that, or else people are going to say, oh, you're just faking it, because it's a low trust environment. And that is one of the most traumatic things you can do to a disabled person.
Yeah. I really feel that. And something that clicked for me recently, I randomly stumbled into this like YouTube short about like freshman year of college, there's all these animated videos to learn a thing, which is what I was using when like the textbooks weren't working for me all of a sudden, even though I was like a voracious reader as a kid.
Right.
And then by senior year, it's like some dude rambling. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Like, I thought I had found my learning style and I'm going to be okay. But
Right.
those resources don't necessarily exist down the road. And yeah, like decisions and the map are being created by a small, tiny segment. Like, for example, all the discussion we hear about the loneliness problem. Why is there so little discussion about overworking and not being able to afford social stuff? It's like people aren't going to social clubs. Yeah, you know why, but like those voices aren't being captured much in like those narratives. It's like it's a tiny data point, like when there are like quantitative surveys, not even like, but not any of like the qualitative conversation. And it's like buried, you know, it's only for like nerds like me who look at the data.
Well, and that's exactly it. And they the problem with college campuses, in my opinion, is as beautiful as they are, the departments won't walk across them to talk to each other. I'm like, you're literally like 100 feet away. You could just go there, but they don't. And so, for example, if you're like, okay, why aren't people doing these social things, events or whatever? They can't afford to do it. It's the same reason why people aren't going to the dentist. Have you seen that a lot of people who are neurodevelopmentally different and are not in a high class have like a lot of teeth issues that like clearly were neglected? They cannot afford to go to the dentist. It's the same reason we cannot afford to do it. So if you don't, and then it's not a competition of like, well, you get to have nice teeth at least. Like, this is ridiculous. So we're you know what I mean? Like we're in a system that is getting analyzed a lot, but at the end of the day, for me, I'm like, okay, well, you guys got to like actually care about this enough to take disabled people seriously now, or else you're never going to get it. They're looking at the wrong thing. They don't know how to care hard enough. That's their problem, and that's why they don't care about us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, people don't know how to have conversations, how to like really listen, because like what I've run into with most people I've tried to like bring up accommodation needs that are not like tiny in Chicago, or like challenges I'm running into, I would get either people being like going off on some tangent story about their life, which like, okay, yeah, like I'll mention, you know, challenges as like an ADHD woman, and they'll talk about just challenges as a woman in general, which like very real, but also we didn't talk about my thing.
Yeah.
Or they'll double down like, but you seem to be doing okay. And like when I try to be like, yeah, but there's all this, like they'll give some platitude about like everyone's going through something, or like life isn't perfect, life isn't fair, like but also these things you're building to try to be inclusive, I don't like.
I don't want to talk about them. Yeah, that you're confusing me. I don't want to have this conversation right now. Just say that. I will literally stop talking about it.
Yeah, right?
If you just said that.
Right? Exactly.
I'm not going to give you a demerit. Yeah. You know, like, oh, this person's a bad person. I don't care. Like, like I'm trying to get my needs met because, again, drowning. So, like, and my friends are drowning, and I'm thinking about my friends drowning while I'm drowning. And if I drown, who's going to help them? Do you see? So I was like, so I really don't have time for people to like weigh in on like if they think that maybe they have the capacity or not to be a good person. Should I just let them know if I think they're good? I don't care. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to write, you know, I'm not going to subtweet you or whatever. I don't care. Like, so they just need to know that like if they're not the guy, just say you're not the guy, please.
Right. Yeah. Like, and it's unfortunate that people don't have the language to say things like, I don't have the bandwidth to have this conversation right now, which I would walk away. Or like, I don't have the funds to do the thing you need. Just say it instead of saying you're doing fine the way things are.
The people
like, no, just acknowledge that if you don't change things, I'm gonna leave And there is nothing you can do besides change things.
Well, and that's why I talk about situating things, which I learned from, like being a little feral intellectual, reading some or listening to some people who said, oh, that's really outside of my expertise, or that's just outside of what I do. So I can't really comment on that.
Right.
I can tell you this specific thing that's specific to me for this specific reason if you want, but if you don't want that, I can also not, because that's not my range. That's not what I do. Right? I don't work on that.
Yeah.
So if people just had a language for that was like outside of academics, like, because I learned that from academics, and they say it like I can't even copy it properly. You know what I mean? Like they'll say that's like outside of my field of expertise, or they'll say like that's beyond my purview. They'll say stuff like that, and I can tell by the frequency that that's normal, and that it's like kind of a lexicon that's like informal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I had an experience recently where in the neurodivergent writers community Discord, so that was like, I don't think it was like the first space, but it was like an aha moment. Sharing about my discovery of this kind of language. So it was the most like obviously consensual info dumping back and forth kind of dynamics that I've seen. And like also just seeing these develop, because it used to be like silent body doubling and then evolving to like some of us wanted to be chatty sometimes, and how like seeing how that worked out in a group where everyone had this kind of language, that helped me develop an appreciation for info dumping, when like I'd been shaming it before because I'd mostly been exposed to like people who would do it to me non-consensually and then say they don't have time when I'm info dumping. And then the thing I really wanted to get to was like, in that kind, like people with that self-awareness of like consent and like the impact of their actions on others, they would say things like that they're not comfortable doing things like, facilitating an event a certain way.
Yes.
Or like, like a very niche thing, versus like most people, they're just like, everything's an experiment. Most people I run into, like I'm in the tech world too, or like it doesn't have to be perfect, we're just here to have fun. I don't know if I mentioned the neurodivergent group I went to in Chicago, where like I said something like I voiced a need, and they're like, well, you're not here because you're neurodivergent, you're here because you like writing. Not to be confused with the Discord writing group, which is a really awesome writing group. And like seeing people voicing their comfort level with things. I can read a reflection that I had about like my I feel like this would be easier than coming up with the words again. All right, I've had trouble building a comfort zone. My concept of comfort feels messed up from the tech world. After hearing my artsy neurodivergent friends talk about their comfort and lack of comfort with different skills and situations, like you mentioned academia, like for me, like I've seen it more like with artists, because like that skill building as well. Even things that often go together, and like they get responses where people mostly take it at face value, or say stuff like, no, you're good at this, based on like skill rather than norms and assumptions. Wait, I don't know if what I said makes sense. But yeah, like after like hearing them talk about it and be like believed, instead of people saying like, no, you're good at this, and like seeing like people interacting in an environment that recognized what a skill is and didn't conflate it with norms and assumptions, and like understood that there's someone who can be really good at thing A and not comfortable with thing B that is often done together with it. I realize that there may be a vicious cycle between the biased feedback I've been getting and my ability to both identify and communicate how comfortable I am with different tasks. This goes back to a history through school and tech of being told you got this, regardless of how I felt. So I cycle between feeling on top of the world and scared of everything, or both at once, which is the most scary because it's hard to think past all those beliefs at once, and biting off more than I can chew, or being thrown into it without consent and burning out.
Yeah.
I don't have a sense of how much of a learning curve is doable, so the idea of working terrifies me.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense to me. And then our strengths are very specific, and outside of, well, I'm going to generalize a little bit, but if you're autistic, I think this is just kind of a given. The strengths are very specific. Yeah, there's some, like, again, abstraction in and out. You can grow it. It can grow. It's not stagnant, but it's specific. So once you're outside of that, and that is irregardless of how neurotypical society has categorized where the line is drawn. If they try to cut you in the middle,
right,
it doesn't work. It's like, this is how my tree grew. You don't get to cut it in half and have it still be a tree that is alive and good. Like, don't do that. So we need some respect for how we function, and not somebody saying that, like, well, because you do this, I assumed you could do that. Are you doing it on purpose? I'm like, okay, that's not how disability works. And then they're saying that we're, like, basically manipulating or con artists or something. It's like, it gets really weird really fast. And at the same time, if we're now in an area where we do not function there, like, it's not our little safe planet that we have gravitational connection to. Now we're floating in space while they're saying you're doing this on purpose, or we're drowning while they're saying, hey, it'd be great if you weren't drowning right now. Like, I guess you're right. I also think that would be great. I have no idea how to not drown. So it's not cool that we end up in this, like, high pressure situation, but we can't anticipate it because it's not a high pressure situation for them. And then they relate it to a way that it feels challenging sometimes when this or the other is going on. I'm like, okay, cool. So it feels impossible because it is impossible when you've been disabled your whole life at the thing that you're doing. And I will never be able at it because it is neurodevelopmental. My brain is not and will never be like that. It's impossible. So, and it's such a weird thing to try. It's like, it's almost like worshiping one brain development or something, and being like, well, I'm the platonic ideal of having a brain, so your brain should get to do what my brain does. I'm like, I mean, your guys' world sucks, if that makes them feel any shittier about it. I'm like, have you noticed how you hate it here too now? Well, I've always hated it here. Please do something. I'm still drowning. I really don't think this is a me problem. And it's hard for us to say that. So I think it's important for us to, like, have some times where we do, even if it's just to ourselves. And then when we look at these situations again, and we have to pick, like, who's a safe person and who's not, it's, can we have this conversation? We don't have right, like, we don't have the scaffolding very much at this point, and I think it's fair for us to admit it, because it's not our fault. It's not like what were we gonna do? How are we gonna build that? And then we can say, like, I wasn't expecting this to turn out this way because you guys aren't communicating about it, because you don't even realize that people have the kinds of problems that I do. Like, that's their first time experiencing that awkward situation. It's our 5,764th time experiencing it, and it feels demoralizing. So so I think it's just important to know that makes sense in the situation. And I don't think people want to do it to us, broadly speaking. I just think they don't know. And we're gonna have to explain it to them, and we're gonna have to come up with something in the meantime, so we're not just literally poor or worried about our health or worried about, you know, just like the sadness of like everybody else like us is also definitely not okay. That feels fucking horrible.
Oh yeah. Like, as you were saying that, I would love like to just have little videos to like communicate this kind of thing, or like, you know, short blurbs like to share with people.
I'm working on this.
I don't have to like come up with and remember.
I'm working on this, because I had a request for that. That's part of why I'm making models out of like triangles, because I need people to know what we're talking about will work for a lot of ADHD, a lot of like ADHD, probably most autistic people, and even people who have high support needs to a degree. I think all of these concepts should be investigated, but it will work for the typical people too. What is fundamentally going wrong here is what I said. They have a pathological let's put this atrophy of care. They do not care enough. And it's not going to work.
Atrophy of what the concept of it, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
understanding of what care is.
Exactly, precisely. What it feels like. If it's okay to feel that way. They feel like it's dangerous to care. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work because, like, what do you think that does to people who are disabled? Nothing good. Because disabled people are confusing.
Right.
In the same way that I find them confusing. And different ways as well. Like and so you have to, if you're going to get confused by something and you want to stop being confused about it, you have to care about it. It's that simple. So if we can simplify it and get that message and then show how it gets into these more specific issues or these more like general problems that we're stuck in a system of, then people can apply it. But they need to know we're talking about like nuts and bolts, first principles.
I love how you said first principles. Like that's what I'm thinking too of like for my idea of coming up with the categories of like areas where we might be different.
Yep.
And then we can flesh things out beyond that and like put links to different people's content about it. Like that might be relevant to different situations.
Exactly. And those categories do exist. How you would relate them, we might need a 3-dimensional model. That might be the problem, right? So if you had a website that navigated, right, maybe that's the problem. We're flattening everything. And we need to show the relationships 3-dimensionally. That could be what it is. So I'm going to go cut out a bunch of polygons.
Like the interplay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then look at polyhedrons and say like, okay, so the interplay is probably part of why our models aren't so good, is we do flatten, and that works for neurotypical people a lot better than it works for people with any disability, for one, but especially neurodevelopmental disability. We're going to have to understand the dynamics of our brain more accurately than like close enough. And so, so what you're trying to do is gives people a topography. Like they're going to be like, okay, this is basically where I can go and it's not going to be a big problem. And this is basically where I can go and I might have some problems, but maybe if I go there with my unique brain, it's still unique. We might even find out more about why it's a problem for some people always. Right? So we want to be able to go put ourselves in these different things and also not put ourselves in the failure conditions where people get mad at us because we can't do the job. That's not fair to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
I know I can do other jobs. Why do I have to be in the one where everyone's mad at me and I feel horrible?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I realize that I cannot make money for my basic needs if I keep trying thing after thing after thing randomly that people suggest. Like I need a way to like, and okay, also just recognizing my needs based on thing after thing after thing not working for me. I realize there are 1,000 more things that won't work for me for different reasons, which is why I feel like if I can have categories of different kinds of neurodivergent needs and then like people's stories kind of mapped to that, see where I relate. Oh, this person who had this experience similar to me that I just saw as like, quirk that hasn't harmed me, harmed them in this situation. Okay, maybe that might rule out this kind of job I've been considering and like narrow down, what I can do and what accommodations I need and like when, to tell them I don't want to do interview number 2 because at interview number 1, they clearly have no concept of my kind of needs or desire to slow down and understand.
Exactly. And what I think we are now testing for is like who is ready to get ready to learn. Because we are not at the point of like who knows how to work with us. Literally no one. Even people that should know how to work with us literally don't. And that's not me shitting on them. That's me looking at like, look at the conditions. I have sympathy and empathy for this whole problem. Like this is a mess. Look at they were just, dude, like California almost got declared war on or something. I don't know what's happening. So like, I get it. It's a lot. I don't know, but they don't. And I'm not going to say they shouldn't have their degrees or they shouldn't have their license or whatever. No, I'm saying
they learned what's out there.
Exactly.
But we need to give them what they're missing instead of telling them do better.
Exactly. I need people who want to ask more questions. I don't need the people who already figured out the answers, because the answers are frankly wrong. And I'm not going to stand there as a disabled person against, Princeton and be insulted while they try to publicly humiliate me for not having money to buy mommy and daddy's, birthday present for them. Screw that. I'm not doing it. Why would I do that to myself? First of all, I'm a battle rapper now, so I have 10 years of that under my belt. So they really don't want to mess with me at this point because I'm pissed. But we don't need to. We don't need to have an antagonistic relationship to this whole problem. What we can say is that we've seen a side of it collectively that needs to be explained, piece by piece. And if someone doesn't have the patience or care to do that with us, they're excluded. We cannot do that because we can't survive people constantly scapegoating us or blaming us when these high stakes jobs, they're all like a house of cards, come falling down because we're freaking disabled. It's we can just say no. We deserve to have dignity. Being disabled doesn't mean you have no dignity.
Yep. Yeah, for real. I don't exist to be a lab rat for society.
Yep. Exactly. Lab rats are treated horribly. That's why the grit cell stuff is messed up.
For the study.
Yeah.
Only for the study to be read by 4 people.
Right.
And then the same thing to be done with more lab rats.
Right. And you know what I love about it? They're like, I'm going to study this lab rat's brain, and rats in the wild are climbing up and down surfaces, but they don't think about that because nobody takes a dance class or takes an accessibility dance class where they emphasize low level, medium level, high level, right? I'm like, you think the mouses and rats' brains don't normally calculate levels? And you've had them never calculate levels in their entire life, and you think they're going to be a good brain for you to study? I mean, maybe it is if we're all, what do they call it? We have zoocosis, like animals in a zoo have this mental issue, and they start getting all wacky, and they're saying that humans have zoocosis because of our society. I'm like, maybe, but you know what I mean? But if you're gonna say well, we like studying mice and rats because they're convenient, and you don't have them living in a natural environment, and then you study them, it's the same problem of the curves in the spine are inaccurately measured because they studied cadavers that had sat in chairs since they were toddlers. So you have to factor in the environmental decisions that you're making before you tell us that you're an authority. You're an authority on that environment. Is that the one shared by humans? Your authority on that environment. Is that the one we should be in? Great freaking questions. I don't want answers. I want better questions. I want better questions and people that care a lot about them. I want those 2 things. I want everybody to have those 2 things installed in their brain.
Oh my gosh. That is what I am trying to communicate, because so the latest thing that I've been doing career-wise is user experience research, because I wanted to learn how to ask better questions, but now I'm seeing the cutting edge of the field is so far from what I've learned in neurodiversity spaces, what I've sorted for, the quality stuff here and the other spaces that I recommend, not the books that are one person's story rambling for 500 pages.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out how to integrate that, and realizing I'm not going to be able to do that at most jobs. Also, my interviews have been going badly because I feel I was trying to mask I'm a typical applicant who's bought into the status quo, and because I don't have the knowledge that senior folks do. But at this point I'm I need to work with people who appreciate what I do have. So I've been trying to verbalize that in easier to understand terms, and I have some draft language for that that we can talk about at some point if we have time.
We do. We can even transition to that in a bit, because we've been hitting a little bit of getting out of unexpected situations with this, and we can talk a little bit about what I've done with AI personally, and that can also be just a general not scripting, but just puzzling it out in advance.
Yeah. I like the talking through scenarios with AI.
Yeah.
Would you like me to share what I've been toying with for this situation?
Yeah.
For the EdTech event? All
Yes,
right.
please.
So, for starters, some things I'm concerned about to look out for. I have a friend who, or actually, first I'll orient a bit further. I like had a couple questions I was planning to ask them, and then a blurb about like myself if I'm gonna drop my LinkedIn bio, and I like one concern that I have is a friend that I shared my blurb with said that I sound like this confusing mix of authentic and like corporate buttoned up bullshitter and edgelord, because like I developed my language system being in tech bro bullshitter land, and like I don't know how to communicate some of these things authentically. So would you first like to hear like the questions that I thought of to ask them if the time arises, or like my, how to explain my situation and like what I'm interested in?
I would honestly like go with the one that feels most meaningful for you to start with, and I'll work from there.
Okay. So the one that I'm most anxious about like is the explaining myself. So what I came up with so far, which I know has a lot of jargon, and I don't know if that comes off as like the buttoned up thing. But I also worry like would people not know how to place what I'm saying if I use different language. But yeah, I can drop this in the chat as well. And then I'll like read it out too and like share a couple concerns that I have. So as a UX researcher, I've helped learning, productivity, collaboration, and social startups engage users across the user lifecycle by identifying and minimizing factors of cognitive load. I'm doing some self-guided learning, digging deeper into aspects of cognitive load and cognitive diversity. I'd love to connect with anyone who's exploring UX from a cognitive load or cognitive diversity perspective. And I hope that like, yeah, I guess my two biggest areas where I'd like feedback is like one, well, like I guess they actually both fall under the same thing of like, is this likely to invite more doing as building rather than arriving type conversations? And also, like under that, some issues I've had in the past is like being typecast as like an entry-level kid who doesn't have anything worth saying, or like an expert. And I feel like saying things this way, like I may come off more like the latter, but like I'm doing this thing, like I want to do this thing that hasn't been done before and build models together. Like, is that coming across here?
Okay, let me read this as well. I listened and now I'm just gonna read it. Okay.
Take your time.
Yeah. I mean, it made sense to me. Okay, let's see this again.
That's good.
I mean, you could also. I started to just call myself an independent researcher because I am. Like, go talk to your AI and say, this is what I do. Is it fair to call myself an independent researcher? And if it says yes, just do it. Like, so if you're like, is there a simpler way for me to say this that it's not necessarily like because it's impressive, but because it's a role in society that people know? So if you can assign yourself with some roles in society, that seems to smooth it over a little bit, even if you're unconventional. If you say, I am that, but unconventional,
right,
you're good. They're like, oh, that's fine. I don't know. I have no idea why it's fine. Do not ask me. I will tell them I have no idea why it's fine,
right.
but it is. So the learning, digging deeper, you could say you're doing like independent research into aspects of cognitive load and cognitive diversity. And that also invites people that have research connections to consider you like somebody who wants to talk to those people. So I'd say that that could be helpful. That's just something that stood out to me because of my life experiences, I guess, so far.
I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually do have a sense of why people might be okay with I'm this role but unconventional. I feel like it kind of goes with the like telling them characteristics to think of you, like in terms of like, okay, like what are your biases about yourself?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is generally what I'm trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it in a way that you're not used to.
Yes.
So that people don't think I'm trying to accomplish a completely different thing. Like
Right.
sometimes when I say like okay, because I've been reflecting on like what gives me meaning, and like I want to make the menu of human experience more accessible. But then people think of accessibility compliance roles, which infuriate me because I know that the thing still isn't going to work for people if we don't go a step further based on the context of the thing we're doing.
You could do I mean, you could do an argument. I mean, if you like first principles in the language, you could put it there, like to say like I'm looking for first principles solutions, or I'm trying to get to understand these problems on the level of first principles and then design up from there. Because otherwise, you know what I mean? Like then you're saying like, well, you're saying a couple important things, that it is necessary for somebody to be an out of the box thinker, which means they have to be out of the institutions that are already giving you guys what's not working. And that's not to say institutions have failed per se. It's just that they are very exclusive, and therefore they are myopic. So once something gets to a certain level of that problem, then you need someone who's really interested in looking at it in a way that wasn't trained out of curiosity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. And also another thing to add is that I like have this independent research thing I want to do. And also I would be interested in like more conventional UX research roles, but like at companies where people would appreciate these kind of perspectives rather than like seeing me as difficult.
Yes.
Which is like one reason I'm like, do I want to identify? But I could still say like I'm doing some independent research on this because I haven't been able to find companies that, or I don't even need to say that second bit necessarily.
Well, out of necessity,
yeah, like
right? Like there's a necessity for this, and therefore I am doing it. You're not saying why the necessity is there. It just simply is. If they feel personally responsible, then like, I'm sorry, like, raise your hand if you felt personally attacked by Regina George. It's just like personally victimized. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, if that's you, then I guess okay then. But I think you're responding to an elephant in the room, maybe. And that's also important for them to know about you. Because if someone's going to expect you to not care about the elephant, no. And if somebody needs someone to care about the elephant, you may be very positively responded to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I was keeping it vague about like putting a like litmus test out there for who might want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And then like how to facilitate that conversation would be another thing, because like I've had so many experiences where people either have ulterior motives or they're like not sure, like whose agenda is it, and like, but anyway, I feel like this in itself could deter a lot of the kinds of, in theory, deter a lot of the kinds of people I've had problems with there before.
Yeah, and that's all we can do right now is again like iterate on it, and because there's no real like template for us to follow. Everything's a mess. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's so anything you do that makes it feel like you're setting the expectations more than is typical, I think is a success, so that they're meeting you where you can actually go, instead of saying like, oh, I'll meet you temporarily where you can go as a disabled person, and then we're going to go skydiving or something. It's like what? Like it's a huge disparity between like what you're trying to work with and what they're expecting from you, and that's just something we need to figure out. I'm figuring it out too, and I think I'm making it better, but I don't know. It's too early to tell.
Well, you've made things a lot better for me.
Oh, good. Yay!
Yeah, like you've given me so much vocabulary for things that I was running into. Like, I don't think I would have come up with this idea to like model, like build a model for these kind of things, because like so many people say like that's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't you just gotta like go with the flow and iterate. And I'm like, but I keep discovering new kinds of problems.
Yes.
I keep being unable to make money.
Yes.
And like I need some kind of starting point to make sense of this stuff like for myself. I feel like there's an alignment between like what I need for myself, and like doing that is going to automatically be good for other people. Who's going to be interested, how it's going to get funded, like that's like up in the air. How all of this is going to get funded,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what we can do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, the funding part I find terrifying to even start thinking of, like.
Oh yeah.
But I do know that the more people who are already like in charge of some resources realize they don't want to keep just handing it up the ladder. Like it's like they're just like put in the bucket and pull the bucket up. They're like, where's it going? Oh, 2 crazy people. Okay. So they may start to reallocate a bit and say like, okay, well, who else is around that cares? And if you I think that's really where I've come to it, is that if you think about, like, I've talked about this idea that okay, so power structures that are abusive, just in general, they'll say that somebody is morally and intellectually inferior, therefore they can't have nice things. Right? And I kept translating and retranslating, and I've come to the point where I'm like, morality is pro-sociality is care. It's care. So if somebody says, like after World War II, that the opposite of love isn't hate but indifference, it's not caring. So caring is right. So if you think of my model with the triangles and 2 people, they face inwards instead of always facing away from each other and going away from each other. So care is to face to it. You're turning your attention to it. The side of you that has eyeballs is there, or the side of it you that theoretically or metaphorically does. Okay. And then the other component of this is the intellectual thing. So that's not IQ. That's not some, rational mind or the whatever bullshit from Plato. It's just making a really interesting, cool model. Like you care about the thing, and then you want to model the thing, and you're somewhat able to do it because you have some kind of training to work with a modeling system that is good for that. So basically you have one side of your triangle is you care enough. The other side of the triangle is that you're, let me grab, hang on, I just took notes on this today. I have another couple words. Give me a second. I was like, I'll just slide this all the way in, and then, nope, where's my notes from today? Hold on. I did this in the call, so. Okay, hold that thought. I'm looking for a triangle on like
take your time.
Little pieces of paper right now. There's got to be a better way to do this in the future. Okay, all right, here we go. Care and clarity. The other side is clarity. Another way to put that is interest and questions. And you like to ask a lot of questions, and you ask so many questions because you care so much. And what does that make? Curiosity or wonder. You just have to wonder about things and stay long enough that the wondering and curiosity can actually like result in new observations, new insights.
Yeah, and like stay in places where I won't get kicked out. To the point where I'm just replaying the same thing over and over again, trying to like piece things together from the parts of it that aren't that important, as opposed to like getting new info.
Exactly. And if no one's answering your why questions, I would argue it's because they don't care enough. So that's they can't do that process with you or help you get better at doing the process within yourself. So you have to have someone that helps you to ask better questions. You have to have somebody that helps you to care more, not say that you don't care or not say that you have all the answers.
Yeah.
Like, if someone has to pretend that they don't care and have all the answers because if they don't, someone takes their lunch money, fine. But if that's not what's going on, I'm not taking nobody's lunch money, so I can't mess with that system anymore. It's hurting us. It's hurting everybody who's disabled. It's hurting everybody who's marginalized and positioned as the intellectually and morally inferior. And ultimately, it's just serving the people that shouldn't have any power at all, who can't make a decision, to get themselves out of a paper bag.
Yeah, for real. I think you might like the couple questions I came up with to bring up at the webinar if the conversation flows in this direction and there's like
Yay.
an opportunity.
I'm excited for this. This sounds fun.
Yeah, I am too, and I'm especially excited now that you're coming. And Mads is coming as well. Oh yeah, there are 2 questions here. I can put some dashes in front.
Let me look.
But yeah, how do you identify types of diversity that you need to include for a specific project is one. Because like diversity is one of the bullet points they mentioned they'd cover. And another is what elements of cognitive load do you pay attention to? Like that one's more bringing people closer to my model. I liked the description of, I can read, the section that says in this webinar, you learn. It's 4 bullets. One is, why most co-design efforts fall short and how to avoid common pitfalls. I'm like, okay, that shows some level of critical thinking. Yeah. Unless like they could just use that to bullshit and be like, that's why everyone else is stupid and I'm smart. So we'll see which they're doing.
Right. Yep.
The next is practical methods for engaging diverse users efficiently and effectively. And I have a lot of thoughts there on, because a lot of people go checkbox diversity, like a Black woman to represent all women and people of color. Or if we're really lucky, an autistic person and an ADHD person, but like someone who's both, sorry, you got 2 different settings, which half work for you. And then there's how to balance speed, cost, and inclusivity in the product design process, which like I feel that the way I approach reducing cost and increasing speed is by thinking about what elements of like cognitive load in this case, which like I can explain what that means if anyone's unfamiliar. What elements are relevant to the problem space you're solving.
Right.
As opposed to going through like a checklist and applying it everywhere and not capturing what's most important for a situation. And then, the last bullet is real world examples of successful co-design from leading ed tech teams. So, okay, like it's not completely hypothetical. So yeah, I was like surprised to see such a like seemingly thinking things through description, because a lot of the events from this org have been more either just a happy hour or like one person's view of the world, but they have so many trophies that they don't need to think anymore. But this is like a panel of 4 people addressing like these kind of questions on like, oh, and like in the educational context, which I've often seen even more removed from critical thinking because it's so much based on arbitrary standards. So like that got me excited about this one, but like stressed out because I wasn't planning to put myself out there anytime soon. But I'm feeling better after our chat.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. If you wanted to, just for practice, we have like 10 minutes. If you wanted to talk about the definition that you're working with for cognitive load, because I have some, but I may be coming from a different angle, and I'd love to hear yours.
Ooh, I would love to hear yours as well.
Yay.
So the way that I think of cognitive load is factors that take up space in people's brain in any given moment, and they can be from a lot of different types. Like there can be sensory factors, if there are a lot of different elements on a screen, or sounds. There can also be emotional factors, like if there's a lot of ads that tug on people's heartstrings, but they're seeing that all day, that can wear them down, and at the end of the day it might have a different impact on them. There's also decision fatigue is another big example. If people have to make a lot of decisions in a row, which are not actually that important for accomplishing the thing that they need to accomplish. And another big one is memory. Like if a website isn't intuitive and people have to remember where things are nested. There are a lot more factors like this, but the aggregation of all of them at any given moment can make experiences really overwhelming. And that's a big reason why people don't stick with products. Either like when they're first trying them out, they don't form a habit around it, or they do try and then they stop using it after a couple weeks or a month because they just find it too overwhelming. How's that?
That's great. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah. So
or if you have any comments about mine.
I think that's a good way of putting it together. It's interesting because some of that model I might end up challenging based on like
Ooh.
Yeah. So if my doing A/B thing is correct, it might create a little more space in people if they're doing building behaviors. So if you're doing building behaviors, it's possible that you will be, how do I put this? Internally, the interiority it will be better organized, reducing cognitive load through there being more pathways to process it, smaller pathways to process it, but more organized and more direct. Okay, so you don't need as much like cognitive runway to get that to go through, because it has a more direct and clearer relationship to other things. So it's kind of like containing multitudes in your brain a little bit more, because but only if the system actually makes any sense. If it doesn't make sense and you try to do that, it's just gonna go nowhere. So you have to have a successful connection where the thing that you learn truly does work, is like falsifiable. Yeah. Okay. So if you had like doing type A, the cognitive overload may be coming just from solely doing that, or having to deal with people that are solely doing that. And in the decreased performance and effectiveness is because you're overloading by not doing enough of this cognitive restructuring, like this you know what I mean? Like it's almost like so I can't remember the right word, but if like a repeating shape, the more you zoom in, it still repeats. I forget what that's called. Is that tessellated still? That might be. Or fractal. Yeah. So a little bit of a like internal fractaling of your mind can help to reduce cognitive load, because we may be not doing that enough. So that's the only thing I would add, is that I'm saying that like this doing type B thing that I talk about could distribute the load by breaking down the tasks into smaller manageable pathways, and you can recognize the recurring patterns that you've already internalized.
Yeah, tasks into manageable pathways. So I feel like we are envisioning similar better states that we would like to get to.
Yeah.
And we're communicating the problems differently.
Right.
So what I've done at like my most successful contract UX research role was they had a complex product with a bunch of features hacked together because they could build the features. But it didn't make sense to users how they all fit together. There were too many of them to learn intuitively.
Right.
So I like designed a 4-feature starting point for them to test with new users, and then iterate from there based on where they were running into friction, releasing a new feature about every week.
Okay.
And that was doing what you said.
Mhm.
How do we break down, like limit the runway, like the steps people need to take from I want to get this thing done to actually getting it done.
Right.
And yeah, like making it easy, like, okay, if you want to access this thing versus access this other thing. As opposed to like some apps like TikTok and Instagram, for example, especially Instagram, I need to memorize where things are, or I just forget. Or just ask ChatGPT like how to do things over and over and over again because it's not intuitive.
Yeah.
The features were developed by people who know how to build features and then hacked together without anyone looking at the overall flow and like comparing, interviewing people about how they approach a task,
Mhm.
agnostic to your tool,
Mhm.
and then seeing where are people like getting distracted or frustrated, like dropping off using the tool based on quantitative data,
Right.
and then putting the two together to see how can we make the tool better match the systems that people use when they're not limited to a tool
Mhm.
to make accomplishing things less overwhelming for themselves. Because like to survive in this world, people are doing some level of that automatically, even without being aware.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then
And
there's the added layer of people could do better yet. But to have that conversation, we need to first have the conversation about how products are not even meeting people at their current level of internalized self-understanding, which they may not be able to verbalize easily, which is why like it's important to ask good questions and good follow-up questions in the interviews.
Yeah.
And then like use that as like the baseline. And then, oh, there's this person who is able to like do this thing really well. But that approach doesn't work for this other person, and like get more nuanced from there.
right. And then what I would say too is that like okay, so I had to look up some terminology. So there's intrinsic load, extraneous load, and germane load. And germane load in that model is what I'm sort of talking about, is what I would redo as doing as building. That's a mental effort directly related to learning and schema construction. So you want something that like the extraneous load is the task, the way the task is presented, which can add unnecessary complexity. And intrinsic load is the inherent difficulty of the task itself. Intrinsic load also factors in disability, but doesn't say it out loud, right?
Right.
And because
Yeah.
some tasks are just impossible for some people and would never occur
Right.
in a world that didn't have people who could do it, right? So the extraneous load is what you're managing for the most part, but you don't want to create, I think, a goal free like problem or a build free problem. Like I think people need to have goals and constructions that they're trying to make
Right.
for
Yes.
motivation. Like that's my whole thing, right? And I may not understand how to help people with a goal type thing. I know I need to turn in goal stuff, but they're going to have to do
Right.
it with my building brain. So then it has to follow me a bit more, and I need to learn how to do that sometimes with structures that don't know how to work with me. But that's where there's like potential innovation.
Right.
So what you're trying to do is create an environment where people can learn how to fix the environment and tell you. But we don't do that because we can't pay them. Does this make sense? So like we're not getting
Yeah.
we're not getting a good feedback loop about like how to contribute, even though these people are supposed to use them to solve their problems. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But if they started to
Yeah.
solve it themselves, they'd become your competitor in this capitalistic thing. So I get why we got kind of stuck there. So if you can like solve it while we're still stuck in capitalism in a way that you don't tip them off, that like what you're really doing is empowering people to get better at the
Yeah.
germane load process, like knowing when they've hit that, and that germane load I think is actually recursively stable. So then you get that thing I was talking about where it fractals in, and you're able to create a structure inside of your mind that can handle this problem really well and related problems. So now you start to have like a cognitive architecture that's part of the the load being relieved, and also will let you know when the way that the task is presented just doesn't work. So you don't even do it. That's what I feel like I got to do because I was reading so much, and I started reading these self-help books at like, like I've told you this, like at 8, that were meant for people having a midlife crisis. And I got through that really early. So then I started to be like, well, I don't need to read. I know that's junk, that's junk, that's junk, that's not right. It's like there may be a couple nuggets in there, but broadly I could say that that schema is wrong. So we want people to build schemas in their mind, and even I think people should have the word schema available to them, even though it's seen as like a hoity-toity word. So part of your job is to tell people that like they should be a little bit, how do I put this? People might call it flow state, whatever. They should be a little bit challenged, but because they're going to change their brain. Like we're not gonna cyborg you into working. We're not gonna give you a computer slave that does everything for you. You're going to grow in your capacity to engage with the world, and you're going to tell us if we helped you and how, and it's always going to be customized a little bit. And then beyond that, then I'm outside of my depth entirely. But I will say, like, in terms of cognitive load, I think we have to think about like the growth of the person.
I agree. And something that like a trepidation that I have with voicing that to the wrong people.
Yeah.
And why like I focus more on the extraneous stuff is the extraneous stuff is getting in the way, regardless of whether people want to build or arrive.
Right. Yep.
The
Fair.
germane load, I personally can reflect on that in a space like this. That is a safe space. I may not be able to wherever I get hired.
Right.
I may need to do work that is more repetitive as long as they don't want me to do it so fast I'd burn out.
Yeah.
And I may want a cyborg so that I can have bandwidth to do this kind of work outside of work.
Yeah, totally.
75% of Americans and 85% of people internationally are not happy with what they're doing at work. Which is why I do think, okay, like since this is an ed tech context, the germane load is more relevant. Versus if it's like a workplace productivity tool, I'd be like, extraneous. Your people are losing precious minutes, wasting time on these flows, and that is distracting them, and they're checking social media and getting coffee 6 times an hour.
Right.
But yeah, I do like want to focus on the self-guided learning space. Because there we can think about things like germane load.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess my thing is like sneaking it in a little bit, I still think does a lot. So like, and there's any way that, you know what I mean? Because I think people have atrophied doing is building. So I want them, if they have a 1 pound weight and I can sneak it in, I'm going to sneak it in. And that will start to create a very different working environment for you as well as me. Because I don't want to succeed in this working environment. I think it's so brutal that it almost feels painful to try to like even think about participating in it. Even though I need resources.
And and then when people succeed, that like falsifies arguments that we need a better system. Right. Look, this one person made it through. They're about to have a heart attack tomorrow. That part doesn't make it into the news.
Exactly. And that, we are looking at a very skewed propagandistic sort of lens, and that's something that we just kind of have to accept, and we don't have to beleaguer it too much at this point. I think we need to tell people, you're hurting. I'm not going to use that against you. We're going to build up trust. Are you getting hurt by this? Because I am. Doesn't make me weak. Doesn't make me this, that, or the other. I have a human body, and I've never for a moment of my life decided I should be ashamed about that, and people have tried to change my mind, and I won't let them. So that's what I want to give to everybody, right? So some of these things, if the user feel it's their fault and the society is
Yeah.
constantly trying to tell you to take that on, it's really bad. So we don't want to reinforce that.
Yes. Absolutely. Have you experimented with Notion at all?
A little bit. Yeah, I have some friends that really like it, and I need to experiment a little more.
Well, I hate it. Because it takes a bunch of steps to do things that should not take that many steps, as opposed to the platform I use called IdeaFlow. Yeah, I think it's
I
IdeaFlow.io
might like that better. Then.
is the main website. It doesn't do all the fancy stuff Notion does, but you can just type and then you can organize later. Apple Notes lets you do that too. You just can't see multiple notes at a time with Apple Notes. But Notion, they like have this marketing, like the community culture, subculture around how you need to learn to think differently to be more productive, which you do. But they're building their model around how they built this product.
Yeah.
They don't have the feedback loop.
Yeah,
they're not doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
And they're shushing people. Like, there are like influencers in this sphere, and there's like a Discord leader who now I felt kind of shushed by her. Like, people are internalizing this from each other. But she when they like got rid of an event where like more people were talking and swapping notes as opposed to like the influencers talking at everyone, and they like didn't find that worthwhile for some reason, so they got rid of it. And she's like, I can host it, I have bandwidth. And they were like, you can't handle it.
Oh wow, that's not good.
Yeah. And many people spend years in like the term is personal knowledge management. It's a whole sphere. It attracts a bunch of people who are overwhelmed with all the info out there and want to learn how to process it, want to learn how to do the fractal stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
But like, I wouldn't have made it here if I wasn't identified as autistic.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
there are a lot of people. It also gives like people are questioning whether they're autistic, which like I was in that space for a long time because I tested inconclusive as a kid, and it's like, oh, maybe it's the system. Maybe it's that you were taught wrong. True.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
Using a different terrible system isn't going to make that better. Not understanding that everyone is different isn't going to make that better.
Right.
And it kind of keeps people in that space. Like, and there was this social network where we were in talks about working together. The way they framed their idea was really great about like helping people find access to diverse perspectives on things they're thinking about in the moment. But they like came from this world, and so they attracted this crowd of people who were like saying things on the app like, I don't think ADHD is a real thing.
Okay.
And like, or like, I don't think neurodivergence is, and like making these arguments that might make people actually think about that. But there wasn't anyone saying the opposite.
Right.
And then like this was like at a different time in my journey when like, and like they didn't even understand like how people's thoughts evolve to the point of letting people like edit or delete their old stuff, because it's not chronological, this platform. It's like the most relevant stuff comes up. So like there was something that I like posted here in this group after it came up in like, when I was high on like one of their events in that group, where I was like, I don't feel disabled. That was like the first line or something. Right. And then I shared that here, and like 3 people very kindly and intelligently were like, you can identify however, here's why I identify as disabled. And like that was kind of the start to, I was like, okay, some autistic people identify as disabled, and then eventually got there myself. And I wanted to edit or delete what I had said on that platform. Like I edited it on Discord, like, because I wanted people to see like, okay, like the journey. Right. But like they added a delete feature, but it it wasn't clear that it meant delete for me and not delete for everyone else.
Oh, that's
And they've
terrible.
like sunset the company, but this bigoted thing I said is gonna be there as long as the servers are up.
Right. Right.
Oh, and like there's no like I said some positive stuff refuting that, but yeah, it's literally just me saying
Yeah.
anything affirming about neurodivergence, and it's a bunch of ADHD questioners.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's so
Yeah.
unhelpful. It's they're like I believe that things can be formed differently in ways that I can definitely see with my eyeballs everywhere, but the brain, since I can't see it with my eyeballs, does not do that. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
the brain is not made of the same material cellular structures as the rest of our body. Is it magic up there? Is it God? Like, please stop. Yeah, that's annoying. Okay.
It's consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God. Falafel sirs telling me what they think makes me mad. Okay. I'm going to start winding down for today.
Cool.
I'm going to check out Idea Flow though. I might like that better. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, one takeaway I'll say, just to like kind of tie it together, is that like if people are unable to adjust their status quo a little bit, I don't think they will be good for networking. Like, I absolutely need people to adjust the status quo. I'm not going to go out of my way to convince them that they should. If somebody hadn't thought of it before and it takes them a minute to come around to it, that's fine. Like, trying to understand that autism is weird is a weird thing in and of itself. I'm okay with that. There's a lot of grace there. But if somebody is just like questioning me and antagonizing me and saying like, aren't we all a little bit autistic? I'm like, can we never do this conversation again? Because no.
Yeah, for real. I feel very similarly. Like, I give people a little bit of bait and see what they do with that. Yeah, one point that I will make about Idea Flow real quick is that product I do love. It is also from that sphere, and so like if you through exploring this discover like networking events for people in the personal knowledge management space, know that that sphere is full of people who are toxic and abusive towards people in general, and especially towards women.
Yuck.
So yeah, like if something seems interesting, you can run it by me.
Thank you. And I'm not shocked that they're effed up towards women, because from a feminist perspective, that's part of their two-pronged attack, is that women are intellectually and morally inferior. But you know what we're really good at? Taking care of their feelings. So if they're doing that, like emotion, logic, rational, emotional split, then I know they don't understand what their own product is. But that's okay.
Yeah, I do think like this founder in particular is like working his way to understanding, but he's still like networking a lot in this space where there are like someone would have to very decidedly be like, I'm gonna miss out on 99% of people in this sphere to build like something like what you have here for me to want to network with them about personal knowledge management.
Yeah. Very interesting, though. I wasn't as familiar with that even as a term. Maybe I've encountered it, but it didn't manage to make it into my like long-term memory. So I'm like,
probably for the best, because I have experienced like trauma exploring this sphere.
I wonder if it's I'm almost like, maybe this should be a feminist project to study it a little bit, because that sounds weird.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to share about this if you would like at some point.
Yeah, I'd be down. I was like,
yeah,
ooh.
it can be a future topic.
Right? I'm like, something I haven't analyzed yet. Oh, more specimens for my specimen board. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. All right. Well, I'm going to let you pop out. I'm going to pop out. I'm going to say bye to everyone if anyone's in chat. And then we'll figure out a topic a little more in advance finally. Things are weird. But all right. Goodbye, everyone.
Oh, yeah. All good. It's been great.
I'm so
And
glad.
really appreciate you. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Jane.
You too. Bye. Okay, and then I'm gonna finish this part, and then I'm gonna keep cutting out polyhedrons that I can fold. I'm a little bit concerned that I'm not cutting it right. Like there's little black lines. I'm like, do I cut on the black line? I don't think so. No, because because then there's a black line separating. Okay, I'm good. So I'm trying to cut very close to a little black line, and that is what I'm doing for the rest of my night because I don't know. I need to make polygons and polyhedrons in order to explain my theory. Apparently, I found out. Okay, goodbye now.